Tadpole fans, you are watching Telesnot! I'm Henry Snotson, and we are starting our recap of Round 5 of the Snot League. We begin with some very one-sided matches. The Rockstars record another phenomenal victory. This time, their victims were the Electric Boogaloo Carnival. The match took place at the stadium in Lustria, and it seems the heat and humidity completely stripped our stinky circus performers of their advantages. In the opening seconds, ringleader Boogaloo wasted 2 opportunities to catch the ball, which was all the Lizardmen needed to start dominating their opponent's half. Carnival Master and his support crew tried to remove Surge Tankian from the field, but it ended disastrously. If it weren't for the miraculous regenerative abilities that Grandfather Nurgle bestows upon his followers, we'd be saying goodbye to ringleader Boogaloo. Moments later, the first touchdown was scored, and Mr. Explodey was ejected from the game. As the second half began, the scoreboard already read 2-0. As if the Carnival didn't have enough problems, the referee decided to target their pogo jumper, giving him a punitive punch after a brief argument. It was sad to watch all the efforts of the Electric Boogaloo Carnival come to nothing. It's hard to say whether it was the unfortunate weather or just plain bad luck. However, the final score of 3-0 leaves no doubt which team was better prepared. Now let's talk about the latest match between the Bill Ballyballers and the Citywood residents. That was a very big surprise for the fans. First off, the Ballers were teleported to a forest stadium right in the middle of their training session. So they didn't even have time to pack their knuckle dusters. The pitch was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Literal trees on and around the field. This unexpected environment really threw off their kicker, who punted the ball quite poorly. The ball ended up Fenbeast's hands. Quite unexpected, the Astalians struggled to regain the ball, but they clearly underestimate that this thing will be excellent in holding and catching the ball. And it turns out they don't have any option to stop it from scoring the touchdown. Without their equipment, the Ballers struggled to do any real damage. They managed to get all but 1 pixie off the field. But before that fairy managed to beat their receptor in a fight. Also, Coach Moranian was quite upset about the stadium itself. Quote, trees messing up the ball's trajectory when it was thrown back into play. Anyway, the result is 2-0 for Citywood residents. That might spawn some question to Joseph and his Astalian team, but they politely answer that they already have secured their place in semifinals, so they focus more on trainings than actual matches. After the disappointing disaster in Round 4, the FC Avelorna coach had to impose restrictions on bringing recording devices onto the field so the players would focus on the game. Their opponents this time were Kamikazen, who had seemingly formed their opinion of the Elven ladies based on their last match. Well, surprise! The elves took to the field with newfound vigor, and their fans finally got to see the finesse they had been longing for. The biggest troublemaker for Avelornians was, of course, Skurs. This demonic giant kept causing painful injuries to the players. But since everything was within acceptable plays, like the surprise tackle that resulted in an open fracture, the referee, despite protests, did not intervene. Early in the game, Ronaldina, with the support of fans from the stands, placed the ball in a very favorable position for the elves. Sura and other turtle warriors tried to punish the Avelorn blitzer, but they forgot that it's not so easy to push around these particular elves. Thanks to this, Peppa scored her first touchdown for the elves and began to redeem herself for her previous antics. After the restart, Samurai Zappa once again failed to pick up the ball, leading to a lightning-fast counterattack by the maidens. And oh, my sweet Nuffle, they were relentless in this match! Miss Gerard even managed to take down Skurs! Following that, the elves comfortably settled in their opponent's half, trying to steal as much time as possible. In the second half, Kamikazen came out so furious that they didn't wait for the elves to start, and immediately went on the offensive. Avelorn had a pretty safe lead, but their ranks, mainly thanks to Skurs, quickly thinned out. The field became increasingly chaotic, with the ball constantly hitting the ground. Finally, Kamikazen managed to spread the elves thin enough for Zappa to break free and rush for the point. However, he underestimated the speed of his opponents. Despite the significant strength advantage of the Nippon players, they couldn't protect themselves from a solo run by Lionella Mercy. A 3-0 score is sure to please the Elven fans, but how can anyone like elves? Yuck! Chaos Halflings, after their surprising victory, began dreaming of escaping the group stage. Unfortunately for them, the Century Centaurs turned out to be a literal wall. From the very beginning, the Centaurs pressed hard on the halflings, but the little guys weren't going to give up without a fight. The Princes of Doom tried to salvage the match with a classic halfling maneuver, the halfling throw. However, Tybals the cat, instead of throwing his teammate far, planted him deep into the ground. With the Centaurs leading by 2 touchdowns, it became clear to the Chaos Halflings that if they couldn't play ball, they'd resort to their tried and true method: violence. The Century Centaurs soon found themselves starting a collection to pay for their players' medical bills. Well, the gifts of the Dark Gods might be practical sometimes, but it's tough to pay for a good doctor with them. Gosh, these dwarves are stubborn as, well, nothing is stubborn as dwarves. The match between PLOBZ and Black Potatoes was supposed to be a classic dwarven derby. You know, where 2 dwarven cages try to push each other around, players bash each other's heads in, no one get injured thanks to the armor, and then they all go for a beer. But this time, we got something entirely different. Tensions between the 2 teams flared up even before the match, right there in the docks, and it was all over. Customs. The Norscan dwarves expected the captain of the Black Potatoes to greet them, while the Black Dwarves were waiting for the guests to ask permission to disembark. This stare-down lasted for a good few hours until the offended Vikings simply sailed away. The host took this as a massive insult and began chasing the retreating PLOBZ along the beach. The referees, seeing that one team had at least sent out a representative, since the rest were busy with the chase, awarded the victory to Black Potatoes. The Chaos Dwarves, exhausted from their long marathon, returned to their stronghold, sat down, and began jotting down their grudges into their little diaries. This time, the Sheiks ventured into the magical forest to face off against the Defayans, and let me tell you, this was no sightseeing tour. Right from the first seconds of the match, Mr. Kopitko, one of the unicorns, learned that the hard way when an attack from one of the Arabian warriors took him out of the game. But these magical creatures weren't about to take that lying down. They repaid the violence in kind. The Arabian team valiantly tried to fend off an assault led by Ray Helka, but when Sheikh Kefir found himself in the stands, surprisingly treated very kindly by the fans, looks like handing out candy to poor kids before the match paid off. When the Sheikh Kefir found himself in the stands, their last hopes of stopping the onslaught crumbled. The Arabs seemed a bit sluggish in this match compared to their previous performances, as they were caught off guard by a Treeman blitz from their opponents on their own half. Though calling it quick might be a stretch. Vegan Sosna Rupert, the enormous tree folk, was leading this attack. But just as the play was about to resume, he unfortunately rooted himself into the ground. Realizing what had happened, he loudly declared, "I played enough, it's beer time!" And as if nothing had happened, pulled out a huge barrel from behind his trunk and began fertilizing himself while admiring his team's desperate attempts to prevent an equalizer from what was probably the best spot on the field. For Sheikh Kefir and his warriors, this was a gift from the heavens. Without that very troublesome obstacle, they go around the rooted Rupert and manage to dominate their opponent's half and score a touchdown just before the final whistle. Looking at the standings, a draw is a satisfying result for both teams, but with 2 very challenging rounds ahead for each, anything could happen. Meanwhile, we've got some heavy controversy following the match between the Deadlock Rumblers and the Redwood Raiders. The Goblins, after taking a serious beating from the half-orcs, decided to walk off the field just before the penultimate whistle, refusing to return due to the brutality of their opponents. With no other choice, the referees awarded the victory to Deadlock Rumblers. In a similarly unfortunate tone, the match between Chainlinks and We Are the Pirates didn't take place either. The Witch Hunters formally refused to play against pirates, elves, and pirate elves most of all. Meanwhile, the pirates were too busy plundering the pockets of the fans in the stands to even set foot on the field. Since neither team was able to play at the scheduled time, the match was declared a draw. And that's all for this episode, folks. We'll see you again in about 2 weeks. May Nuffle watch over you. Or better yet, may he not. Because you never know what that old trickster means by watching over. Bye!